This is Cult and Culture. I'm Justin Pearson.
And I'm Luke Henshaw, and we're here at Penguin Studios in San Diego, California.
This is the first official Cult and Culture podcast. It's sort of morphed from a brief little snippet interview kind of thing into the first full-length podcast.
Episode 1.
Here we are with Tim Mays.
Hello.
So how would we, what kind of like label would we give you?
Man, that's a good question. The main amount of work I do is booking shows for, Casbah, but then everywhere outside of that too. So talent buyers probably apt, but then I own the Casbah too. So I don't know, club owner, concert promoter.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
And specific to San Diego.
Yeah, specific to San Diego.
Do you ever do anything out of San Diego?
I have not.
Yeah.
Out at Pioneer Town,
Oh,
Happy and
yeah.
Harriet's, maybe once a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So I want to know how you got this start, I guess. First of all, let's just figure that out.
Yeah, so, when I was a kid, I grew up in Barstow,
Whoa.
out in the desert. Yeah, it's pretty gnarly. And my mom still lives out there, but the heat really did me in, so I can't go back there during the summertime at all. But when I was a teenager, I started going to see shows down in San Bernardino and Los Angeles. First show I ever went to was at the Forum in LA with Sly and the Family Stone, probably about 72. And then we'd go to a place called Swing Auditorium in San Bernardino and saw Led Zeppelin there, Black Sabbath. Yes. God, who else? Probably ZZ Top, a few other bands, big bands that would play there, And then I moved down here to go to school in 73. And I lived in the dorm, and I lived next door to these two kind of well-off kids from Pacific Palisades. And they went up, saw Bowie at Santa Monica Civic in whatever year, 72, I think that was. First time he came over. And so I kind of got turned on to David Bowie by those guys. And then started listening to, Bowie and Mott the Hoople and Lou Reed and Velvet Underground and Iggy and all that stuff. And then I had a good friend who I grew up with in Barstow who lived in Santa Ana. And we started going up to Los Angeles to see, punk rock shows at Hong Kong Cafe, Starwood, Whiskey, wherever, And we got this crazy idea, like, let's put on a show. So we rented a hall in East Hollywood called Basie's Hall. It was the
But you were living in San Diego.
I was living in San Diego. My friend lived in Santa Ana, but we didn't, we just thought, let's do it in LA because all the bands we went to see were always from up there. So we rented this hall. It was on Vermont, right off Sunset. And we got the Weirdos, the Plugs, Suburban Lawns, and then the Penetrators from down here.
Okay.
We booked them all to play. And we put this show on it. It did really, really well, amazingly well. We'd go up there every week and put out flyers on the street.
Yeah.
That's back when you could
of course.
nail, do them to phone poles and stuff. And there, at the same time down here, there was a girl named Laura Fraser who started the Skeleton Club. And she somehow got a hold of me after she heard about this show I did in LA and asked if I wanted to be her partner because she needed somebody to invest some money. So I gave her $1,000 and became her partner.
Wow.
And the Skeleton Club was on 2nd and Market downtown. At the time, it was 2 blocks away from the police department. So the cops would cruise by, all the time and come out and harass people.
Yeah.
And there were these really weird arcane rules about dance permits where you could have a concert license for all ages, but it wouldn't allow dancing. And so we wanted to do all ages, so we had a concert license, so they'd come in and bust people for pogoing or dancing.
Whoa.
So we'd get cited. So you could get the dance permit, but then it limited your age to 17 and up. So it was kind of a weird thing that the city had. So after about 5 months, we just kind of folded up. And I started managing a band called The Unknowns at the time, who were playing a lot. And then started booking some shows with Mark Rude, and a couple other people in a company. They had a thing called Dead or Alive. And so I joined up with them, and we did shows at the Lions Club, Fairmount Hall, and bands like Angelic Upstarts and Misfits and Black Flag and Circle Jerks and stuff like that. Then those guys all got kind of burned out on it, so I just kept doing it myself. And like 82, 83, started doing things at Adams Avenue.
Okay.
which was a really great venue. Held about 900 people.
Which is now
It's now the Fabric Place
Fabric
on
store.
Adams.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it was a really cool place. I mean, we did so many great shows there.
There was that famous Slayer one there, right? Where there's a riot. Did you do
Yeah,
that show?
yeah.
Okay.
The Slayer, and we had Motorhead booked there once, and we didn't get the right permits, so the show was canceled, and people broke into the place and trashed it. That was
Whoa.
kind of the end of my thing. That was like I think late '84, '85. But then I just started doing. I was doing shows at Spirit Club too, which is now Brick by Brick.
Yeah.
And so I did that for a while, and then I kind of stopped about 85, 86. There's a lot of skinhead violence back in those days. And,
White power, 1, 2, 3, 4.
People, these San Diego skinheads, SDSH,
Yeah.
they would terrorize people and terrorize bands.
Yeah.
And I just got tired of it. Me and my friends opened the Pink Panther, which was a bar.
Uh-huh.
I completely stopped doing shows for a couple of years till we opened the Casbah, the
Okay.
first location,
Yeah.
which is where Kava Lounge is now. We
Yeah.
we opened there in '89.
So where was the Pink Panther?
It was over on Marina Boulevard.
Oh.
It's not there anymore. It's next door. There's a place next door now called the High Dive,
Okay.
which is next door to where the Pink Panther was. And that was just a beer bar with a jukebox, and we'd have DJs. It was like the first bar opened by young people.
Sure.
For young people
Yeah.
at the time. So it was crazy. We lasted there about 4.5 years. Then the Casbah opened, and the original idea was just to do kind of local, rockabilly, some jazz, some real light stuff.
Sure.
And phones started ringing again,
Yeah.
from people that I'd worked with.
Yeah.
And we ended up booking in the first year. Well, then Harlan Schiffman, he was doing all the shows at Iguanas. He started booking his shows there rather than the Spirit Club. So he booked Nirvana and Smashing Pumpkins, and a lot of those bands were through him.
Okay.
And then who else played there? Like Primus played there really early on. The Jazz Butcher, Lemonheads, Goo Goo Dolls before they got shitty. A lot of bands came. It was 75 capacity, but they would rather play there than the Spirit Club, which was 3 times as big, just because the people who ran the Spirit Club sucked.
Yeah.
So that kind of just started, and then we moved to our current location in '94, and slowly over the years, just as the bands came through, they would get bigger, and so they would remain loyal, and so we started looking at bigger places as they got bigger to put them in, so. And now it's just crazy. I mean, any given night, like tonight, we got like four shows going on.
Wow.
That's
wild.
And so it's like that, and it's just so it's basically a concert promotion company now with the Casbah, and I've got people running the Casbah, so I don't have to be there all the time.
Sure.
And that's how it started.
So it's crazy because when I'm a little bit younger, so I remember like the first Casbah, I would go and look because you could watch from I was under 21.
Yeah,
I
you
was,
could see through the
yeah,
door
and
there.
I would do all these rad bands would go there, and I mean I went to the Spirit Club too. I went to see like saw Gigi Allen and No Means No.
Right.
But
Yeah,
there
we
couldn't-
turned that Gigi Allen show down. My
good
partner
idea.
Bob got the call, and he said, "What about?" I said, "I didn't want to do it, man."
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I would watch I've seen so many shows outside the door of
Yeah.
the first Casbah. And it was funny because then I, kind of grew up with this sort of like Discord ethics, and,
Oh,
and
yeah.
like Mike Denny from Amenity and stuff. We were like the all ages group.
Right.
And so it was never even a question. Like none of our friends' bands or bands that we were related to that would play there.
Well
But
aware.
Yeah, I know.
I tried many times.
But you were always so awesome and would book us at other venues when
Yeah,
that
I
started
mean,
happening
yeah,
later
yeah,
on.
right.
The
Like
Locust and stuff.
the Epicenter.
Yeah, Epicenter, but all kinds of places, and it's rad too for me. I mean, I don't want to sidetrack, but like I was psyched that like when I did compromise my own personal all age morals and played a 21 and up show, it was at the Casbah.
Yeah,
With
we
Retox.
were stoked.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a long time in the coming.
It
The
was-
fans were getting too old to go to the
yeah.
Epicenter anymore.
But yeah, but
But-
a good thing to talk about though is like why do you think San Diego is so friggin' tough about all ages? Because
Well,
it doesn't happen in other cities.
In a lot of other cities, and I may be wrong, but I think the all ages venues that outside of Soma and now the Observatory, well, Soma recently started serving beer and wine, but Soma's got such a bad rep over the years, and
Yep.
that guy didn't put any money into rejuvenating his place at all for
Uh-huh.
25 years. Finally, he's making some changes there,
Yeah.
but it wasn't a good place to see a show. Epicenter sucked way out there.
But you would
know?
book shows at
Well, I would still do
Soma.
shows there, but I guess there was no place of about a 400 or 500 capacity located in a good location where you could do a show that people would enjoy going to.
Sure.
So other cities that have clubs that have those capacities, they're able to serve booze. I think a lot of them aren't as strict as San Diego. So the bottom line is it's hard to make money just as an all ages thing, like those Epicenter shows,
Yeah.
We'd go in and pay rent, and you'd have to then do the advertising and bands and staff. And, you got the door money, but it wasn't always enough to make it work,
Yeah, sure.
And we did some shows there with some bands that should have done really well and didn't,
Because no one wanted to go up.
Well, that's
there.
part of the reason. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. I mean, it was
Huh.
just such an out of the way place, but there's never been a location in San Diego where you could go, say, find a show. I mean, the Irenic now, 400 capacity,
Oh,
all ages. Granted, we could never have done something like the Locust there,
yeah.
but we do a ton of shows there, and it's good, and people like it, and it's a good place to see a show, and
Yeah.
it's right. I mean, everybody's close to it, so. But San Diego's always been. There's never been a place like that you could do that kind of thing. I get funny after all these years now. Some agents are asking me to book shows up at the Shea Cafe.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I did shows back there in the '80s, but I
Yeah.
hadn't done one in years. And we did a couple. Dashboard Confessional wanted to do a show there, so we
Uh-huh.
booked it like 2 days notice, and it sold out really quick.
Yeah.
And then we did a couple others, but dealing with the staff and the students up there,
Yeah.
it's kind of not not the easiest thing to do.
So
Nobody gets back to you, or
What are the agents when they say they want to play at the
they
Shea?
just want to play something that's
Nostalgic.
nostalgic or really small and cool.
Yeah.
In their minds, it's cool.
Yeah.
The whole history of it and
Yeah.
all the stuff that I think when the place almost got bulldozed a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, there was probably a lot of press on it
Sure.
all over, so
Yeah.
people became aware of it. And so it's on people's radar. A
Yeah.
little
I mean,
bit.
it's like our Gilman Street.
Oh yeah,
you know.
completely. And so yeah, we're occasionally doing shows up there now.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
That's really
it's
cool.
pretty crazy.
So it's funny too because when I grew up, it's weird to like talk to people now about like the problem with Nazi skinheads, and when I was growing up, there was a problem at every show, even before.
What year did you move here?
I moved here when I was 12, so that was 87, and it
Yeah.
was
That
sucked.
was still going
And
on.
even
then,
when I
yeah.
started playing in my first band, Struggle, we would get. I mean, we were political and very leftist, but we would get like beat up by these skinheads. all
Oh,
the
these
time.
guys beat up bands there was a place called Kings Road Cafe on 30th, which was short-lived, only a couple years. Really cool place. It started out as a coffee shop, and then my friend Peter English ran it for a couple years. We did Minor Threat there, and
Whoa.
Vandals, and Husker Du, and all these really cool bands. But that's kind of when the skinhead thing first started. They came in there and just I remember this rockabilly band there called Jimmy and the Mustangs played once. They were really big in LA. They came down and got in a fight with somebody, man, and the whole band got their asses kicked. Their
Yeah.
gear got trashed. I think that happened to the Vandals at Fairmount Hall
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was the famous Vandals show.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
You
yeah.
did that?
I didn't do that
Oh,
one. No,
oh.
it was somebody else's show. Thank God.
Uh,
I can't remember who did that one.
Did Scott Bartoloni do it? He
Maybe,
did something. Too. Do
maybe.
you know Scott?
Yeah, I know
So he
Scott.
did something that was like, yeah, the Vandals and they did the Skinheads Aren't Allowed.
Yeah,
song
yeah,
or whatever. And and he was like 14 years old when he did it or something.
It was horrible times, man. I mean, the group probably about 10, 12, 15 of them at most.
Yeah.
They're all super buff guys.
Yeah.
They would just come in and just we weren't even there to see the music.
No,
just
no, yeah.
terrorize
Yeah.
and beat people up.
I mean, I would
so-
go to the World Beat Center and they'd be there, and I'm like,
Yeah.
"You're at a place called World Beat Center.
right,
It's like
exactly.
reggae themed,
Yeah,
and they're
there
like
was
there.
no
like, yeah.
mentality to it.
But it's crazy to think about, like, so San Diego, even with the like sort of like very strict conservative, like not anti, but like the how there wasn't all ages stuff, like it wasn't very welcoming for those kind of venues.
Right.
And then you had like like maybe because of the border we have like institutional racism or overtly racism or whatever, and then all of a sudden you have like a lot of just negative shit, and so you end up having this sort of, because I mean I wonder, like, I mean, no, I know it was bad like in the 80s for like punk bands in LA and stuff, but like in San Diego it seemed like a little bit more. I mean, again, I'm going. I mean, I wasn't around to see those things in
Yeah.
the 80s, but like I'm like assuming that like I don't know, like a different scenario here than it would be in other cities.
In LA, like the whole violent punk rock thing up there was on a much bigger scale because there's so many more people. Like those shows at the Olympic Auditorium, it'd be like 5,000 people
Yeah.
there. And if you had somebody like Suicidal Tendencies play, there'd be ridiculous, huge gang members. Circle One.
Yeah.
O used to play in
Yeah,
Circle
yeah,
One. He used
yeah.
to tell me his stories
Yeah.
about that. TSOL even back then had a lot of problems, but down here it was a smaller group. And when punk rock stuff first started here in like 79, 80, it was a really small group of people. You knew everybody, and everybody was into every different kind of music, because you'd go see whatever you could because there wasn't that much to go see.
Sure.
So all kinds of different bands would come. And then it got, just like in Orange County in probably 81, 82, where all the jocks started coming in. And then a bunch of people who weren't there for the original thing, which was the music or the identity and a group of people who were not part of the mainstream, just came in and completely changed the whole thing. And down here, it was those skinheads were able to terrorize a much larger group of people. I mean, even the security people I'd hired didn't want to deal with them
Sure.
because they were scary guys.
Yeah. And then I
You know?
remember like growing up too, going to the very first Soma when it was downtown, but all of the security there were white supremacists and they were scary too. I
Oh
remember,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
So
Yeah.
then it was like even crazier because I mean, and that was all ages, or maybe it was 18 and
No,
up.
I don't know. I don't remember. I only went there once or twice. I think it was all
Yeah.
ages. Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
scared to go there, and I was scared of that's why we never even played there. It wasn't like because there was like the anti-Soma thing that a lot of bands
Right,
had.
the whole John Reese tackled on stage thing. Wait, did you ever hear that story?
I'm not sure.
Like, so Rocket would never play there
Yeah.
because they did play there at the original one, and I don't know if John dropped a mic or something happened, and the soundman came on stage and tackled him.
Wow.
And so they vowed never to play
Yeah.
there again, and they never did.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the bands fell in line with that.
Yeah.
And it's funny because years and years later, we're doing a show at we did the Descendants over at Soma last year, and they wanted the Widows to play.
Yeah.
So we booked the Widows, and Max goes back to that time when
Sure.
Rocket wouldn't play.
Yeah.
And he comes up and he goes, this wasn't that bad, man. We had a good time.
Yeah.
All those
Yeah.
years he had held this thing in his mind
Yeah.
that emanated from that one incident. So
But it was more than that for
Yeah.
me. Not to,
it's changed a lot now.
Yeah.
I mean, but back then, I remember those guys who worked it. They were all like big, stocky, white, blonde-haired dudes.
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. I mean, they beat up Eric Allen from Swing Kids and Unbroken. So then there was like the San Diego Five. I think like Blackheart was part of it too. There was like some article that came out in the Reader like a few years ago, probably like 10 years ago now, and they quoted Paul Jenkins talking about Lynn from Soma, saying like, "You'll never make it, if you don't ever play Soma," and they never did. But it was a weird thing to like have that be or have that exist in San Diego because there wasn't room to like be shitty to bands or to be shitty to other people because
Oh,
they
yeah.
would try to shut down the Che and
Oh, yeah.
he
I've
would
heard
or
all the
whatever.
stories like
Yeah.
people getting calls. They don't have a permit or
Yeah.
too many people or
Yeah.
whatever. I've never understood how people are shitty to bands and still able to operate and stay in business.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been doing it a long time. He's not there running the place anymore.
Yeah.
He's got a much better group of people there who are kind of more in tune with other
How
people,
should, yeah, how it should be.
But, it's just like back in the early days when the Casbah was first starting out, Brett Bodie had a place downtown called Bodie's, and it was a little bit bigger, and they did a lot of shows there. A lot of the same bands we were doing. This is like 90, before we moved. It was 90, 91. And, Brett's a friend of mine. I've known him for a long, long time, but he would stiff bands sometimes. If the show didn't do well, he wouldn't pay him.
Oh yeah.
And the word started getting out of that, and after a while, bands just didn't want to play there.
Yeah.
And that kind of helped us because we were competing for bands at the time. And it's
Sure.
like, so ever since then, I mean, we always try to make a point of making sure the band is taken care of. You
Yeah.
know, just like if I was traveling on the road and I pulled in somewhere, I'd want to be treated the same way that we treat people. Just yeah. That's
Yeah.
always been our philosophy.
It's
Yeah.
definitely something like I've played both shows, like where the venue and the people that work there suck, or the venue and the people that work there are awesome, and it makes a difference,
Oh, big
especially coming
time.
back. And it's gonna make a better performance. It's just gonna be
Yeah, it's
better
all
all
around for, and word gets out too for, bands and agents and booking people and fans
Yeah.
and what have you.
It is great though to like be able to go literally all around the world on tour and to see Casbah shirts and hoodies and stuff, and you're like,
It's
wow,
pretty crazy.
Yeah.
I was somewhere recently, out of the blue, some guy walks by with a Casbah shirt, and I'm like, whoa,
Yeah.
yeah.
I saw one
Pretty
in
good.
Japan, and
Really?
it was rad. Yeah,
it's
it's
pretty
a
funny.
cool way to connect with
Yeah,
someone.
it is. It is.
So okay, there's like the famous Slayer show and the Vandals one, but there's a couple other ones that I've heard about. Like I assume maybe you booked. There was this Misfits one, right, where Doyle like hit someone.
What do you think, we're lightweight?
Yeah, that was at the Lions Club.
Did you do that show?
That was right when I first joined up with the Dead or Alive guys.
Okay.
And so it was Mark Rude. I'm sure you've heard of, you know who he is. There's another guy named Mickey Williams. We were the three partners. And then there was a girl named Sherry Cotton who kind of ran the door and got the permits.
Did Mark live in San Diego?
He lived in San Diego at the
Oh,
time.
I
Yeah,
thought
yeah.
he lived as an
He
LA
moved in
person.
LA probably 85
Okay.
or so. But he was down here. I mean, I first met him through the Skeleton Club. He was kind of a punk rock troublemaker.
Yeah.
Just getting fights, getting wasted all the time. And he was like the granddaddy godfather of all the punk rocker guys. Because he was a little older than everybody, So anyways, we were working together on this Misfits show. It was the Misfits, Saccharine Trust, and I can't remember who else. And Mark got in a fight outside and got taken to jail.
Okay.
So he was friends with the Misfits guys. He had known them from New York.
I mean, he did their artwork. And
Yeah,
stuff.
Exactly. So I didn't really know them. I hardly knew anybody at the time. I knew Mark, I knew Mickey, I knew Sherry, and a couple other people. So I had made a deal with Chris D, who ran Ruby Records at the time.
Oh, yeah.
He was booking them
Okay.
because they were on Ruby
Yeah.
at some point. So I made a deal with him. And then the show happened, and that bass incident where he whacked somebody over the head. And
So it was Jerry with the bass?
I can't remember. No, I can't remember. It might. I think it was Doyle.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So I don't remember anything really coming of that much.
He didn't kill the person.
No,
but
nobody died or
yeah,
anything. Just
yeah.
somebody got a big bump on the head and blood. All I remember beyond that at that show was at the end of the night, they come to get paid, and there was a discrepancy on what they thought they were supposed to get and what I thought they were supposed to get of a few $100s, which back then was a lot of money.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm like, the Earl, the guy who was in Saccharine Trust, the bass player Earl, super tall, gnarly dude. He's coming up. There's like 4 or 5 guys standing there, and I'm sitting in the box office holding the money out. Here it is.
Yeah.
They're like, well, it's supposed to be this. I'm like, no, luckily I had a contract from Chris D, as it was, here's what I got from Chris. So, but I was like nervous, because I didn't know any of these guys at all. And Mark Rude was gone because he could have been able to kind of mediate there. But so, yeah, that's what I remember most from that show. Not even the incident of the person getting hit.
No, that's so boring then.
Yeah, well,
no, I mean,
I was kind of scared at the time.
It's popped up in some Misfit stuff I've read
Yeah.
about, and I was like, they're always saying like the San Diego show where Doyle hit this guy, and I don't know, whatever. I thought I read that he was in a coma or something, but
I've never heard that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe the myth got bigger over the years.
I'm sure that happened.
Right.
Then there was the other one with, did you ever book The Exploited?
Yes.
And that was like a riot too, right? Because there was a bunch of Nazis there, and everyone came to fight them. And
Well, we booked a show. I booked them a couple times. Once at Adams Avenue,
yeah.
and once at the State Theater. And
So where was the State
Theater is out on like 63rd and El Cajon.
Oh, okay.
It was a movie theater for years and years and years, and then it became like a kind of an Asian cinema. And so we booked a show there with UK Subs and Exploited, and you'd walk in and they'd taken out most of the seats of the theater, but they had left the little pins in the floor, the screw posts where the seats went, and then they'd bolt them down. They didn't take any of those off, so all over the floor there's these little like screws sticking up, and it was dark in there, and the band's playing, and there wasn't a riot at that one, and I don't remember a riot at Adams. I mean, a lot of stuff happened at Adams where police would come and block off the street. There was the car wash across the street.
Yeah.
They'd park all their cars in the bays of the car wash and just wait till things got done. And, shit would happen. People would get arrested. People would throw bottles, but I don't remember any riots.
Huh.
But they exploited it at State Theater when they went on. The power went out in the building, like 10 minutes into their set.
Let's start a war.
The guy who ran the theater, up and they had a projection booth with all the power and stuff. And we went up there, and he had no idea how to turn it back on or do anything.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
the band tried to just sing some songs and stuff, and it ended up just, nothing happened. The
Yeah.
show was over, and
Oh,
people left. The theater never opened another day for business after
really?
that. That was
Wow.
the end.
Wow.
I think the fire marshals came in the next day and
Uh-huh.
looked at what was going on in there. Not even with the show, they, it was the day after, but just said, "Yeah, you guys are done."
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, the metal spikes. In the
Yeah,
ground,
that alone was a
that's
complete safety
insane.
hazard.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You can imagine like hitting your head on one of those.
Or they maybe they called somebody to try and get the power turned back on, and somebody said, "Hey, this isn't gonna fly."
Yeah. And so at the Adams Avenue one, it's funny because I wash my car there sometimes.
Yeah, you know exactly what
but
I'm
so
talking about.
the cops would just wait for the
Oh yeah, they
shows?
would park in there and wait
Mhm.
till the shows would get over around 11, and
just for the hell of it.
just wait and see what was going on.
Yeah,
Yeah,
wow.
I mean, because there's, behind the theater, there's an alleyway, and there was nothing but apartments back there.
Yeah.
So, and then the stage was at that alley end of
Sure.
the building. So, it was super loud, and people would be, drinking and pissing and
Yeah.
doing what
Yeah.
they do. So the neighborhood was pretty riled up about things a lot. And that's why they'd call the cops, and the cops would come. Luckily, they didn't shut the shows down. There was one time when Social Distortion played there, and Mike Ness was super drugged out at the time, big junkie.
So when they were good.
Yeah, exactly. Mommy's Little Monster
Yeah,
time,
yeah,
right? So somebody, Joe Coochman, you know who he is, right?
I
You ever
don't
heard of
know.
his name?
No, I don't know.
Okay, so he was a guy in a band called Crabgrass back in the
Oh.
83, 84. But he was a notorious troublemaker. Little guy, too. He wasn't even that big. He's from South Bay. He threw a bottle and hit one of the security guards early in the evening outside in front. And so the security guard called the cops. The cops show up. The bands, it was Social Distortion, I think the Minutemen, and a couple others. And the cops wanted to come in and shut the show. And I talked them into waiting until it was done. No, maybe it was Mike Ness, actually. Mike Ness and Joe Coochman were both involved because they wanted to come in and arrest Mike Ness.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, no, you got to wait till the show's done. There'll surely be a riot
Yeah.
if you guys come in now. So they all waited.
Wow.
And, I gave word to the Mike Ness's guy. I said, hey, they're going to arrest him. You sneak him out the back door,
Oh yeah. Wow.
when he's off stage.
Yeah.
And he came off stage and he was so wasted. He went out a different door on his own.
Yeah.
The cops were there and they handcuffed him,
That
took
was
him to
it.
jail for a couple days, I
Wow.
think. Yeah.
So, do you have any other awesome ones that maybe I?
There's a good one there when the Cramps played.
Ah, okay.
So, I'll finish up about Joe Coochman in a minute too, because there's a good comeuppance with him many, many years later.
Okay.
Let's do that first, actually. So Joe
Yeah.
Coochman, notorious troublemaker, in a band called Crabgrass. He had a house in IB where they did house shows and stuff,
yeah.
and he wasn't one of the skinhead guys, but he would equally bad troublemaker, just beat people up for no reason,
Yeah.
and go around and break things and destroy shit. And probably 10 years ago, he got arrested for he was basically meeting transvestites and hooking up with them, taking them back to his house, having sex with them, then beating the shit out of them.
Wow.
And so at some point he got arrested for that
Yeah.
and went to prison for life. So he's serving
Whoa.
life in prison
Whoa.
for that. Yeah. So anyways,
Wow.
Joe Coochman.
Of
well
that
deserved.
band,
Crabgrass
yeah.
guy, yeah,
Oh.
bad
Oh.
news. So anyways, the Cramps were playing there at one time, and stage at Adams wasn't very deep, probably from this wall to that wall, from the depth. And Nick Knox had a big gong behind his drum kit, and Lux, a guy named Mike Wood, another bad news troublemaker guy back then.
Uh-huh.
There's all these dudes, man. But he was bad news too, and he would beat people up. Same kind of thing, just guys who were violent and drugged out and just stupid and
Yeah.
troublemakers. So he got up on stage somehow and stole the gong
Wow.
To beat
the mallet.
the
Yeah,
mallet. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
not the gong.
Yeah.
The mallet. He
Uh-huh.
grabbed the mallet, and Lux saw him do it, and I guess Lux pushed him off stage, and he almost bumped into Ivy, and so Lux chased him into the crowd,
Yeah.
and like pummeled him a couple times, got the gong back, and got back up on stage, and there was a recording of the show. Cliff Cunningham, do you know him?
Yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
Cliff used to record shows.
Uh-huh.
So he has a board recording of it where Lux gets on stage and goes in this whole little monologue like, this stage ain't big enough to get people up here. There's only 3 feet from me and my band. And if you come up here and bump into me or bump into Ivy, you're going to pay for it. And,
Yeah.
and he had the gong back and everybody's like, yeah.
Yeah.
That was pretty fun. That guy
Wow.
ended up dead of an OB at some point. So Mike
Wait.
Wood.
Oh, I
Yeah.
thought you meant Cliff. He's still
No,
around.
Cliff's still around.
Yeah.
I still
He's-
see Cliff, yeah.
I heard he's getting Social Spit back
Yeah,
together.
they still play every now
Yeah.
and then. Yeah.
That was one of my earliest memories of San Diego.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Social Spit?
Yeah, I would go to the Off the Record. On
Yeah,
Oakland
yeah,
Boulevard,
right.
and
Yeah.
He was
for
like,
sure.
I would go in there, and it's so funny because he was like, he's like, little kid, you should buy this record. It's on pink vinyl or whatever. And I was like, oh, pink vinyl, cool. And then I found out that he was the singer of the band. And now I don't see him ever. But I do
Well, he
talk
lives
to
up
him on
in
Facebook.
Fallbrook or Ramona or something.
Yeah.
He was a post office guy for
Yeah,
years
yep.
and years and retired. And
Which is kind of interesting too, because he has a prosthetic leg.
yeah.
So it's weird that he was a postal. He was a postal delivery person.
No, I think he worked in the post office.
Oh, I
yeah.
thought someone told me that he
I don't
did,
know,
like,
maybe.
walked around.
So he used to live on 31st and Grape back in the 80s.
Yeah.
And he had a house there and kind of around the corner from where the big kitchen is.
Sure.
And he would have bands come over. He would make dinner for bands a lot when they came to town.
Yeah.
So he would have dinner, have bands over, and then they'd go over there afterwards and
Yeah.
party and stuff. And they're all sitting around at one point, and some girl's talking to him, some young girl, and oh, it's Cliff. He works at the record store. He knows the band. And so they're all hanging around, drinking and partying. And at one point, Cliff takes a fork and sticks it in his bad leg. But the girl didn't know that he had a fake leg.
Yeah.
He was like, she goes, oh my God, what did he goes?
Yeah.
It's all right. It's a fake leg.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a great guy. Still is a great guy.
And then it's weird too. What about Battalion of Saints? Because I had like a weird sort of connection with them because the Locust's first drummer, Dave Astor, his dad was also Dave Astor from Battalion of Saints.
Yes. So I knew those guys. They're some of the first people I got to know when I started doing punk rock shows. George and Chris, and then Barry, and then Lloyd, and Ted was the drummer that I knew, Ted Olson. And it's funny, back then, like 1981, Ted Olson worked for the city, and he was actually owned a house in 1981. They're like, what?
No one.
How do you own a house,
Yeah.
man?
Yeah.
Anyway, so I booked a tour for those guys
Whoa.
in 82.
Like a U.S. tour.
Yeah, U.S. tour.
Wow.
Like via Maximum Rock and Roll,
Yeah.
Flip Side,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
You'd look through the scene reports and you'd find a phone number, and you'd get on the phone
Yeah.
and you'd have to call. The phone bill was like $1,000
Yeah.
to book a tour. And they went out, and it was a pretty decent tour. It's like 40 or 50 shows all the way around, a little bit looping and back down. And they got through about 5 or 6 of them, and the band just kind of disintegrated.
Wow.
I forget who was playing guitar for him at the time. I think Chris wasn't in the band at that point.
Yeah.
It was Brian Baker play with them at one point? I don't know.
Huh.
Somebody did from DC. But anyways, the whole band just fell apart.
Oh,
And
that's too bad.
they kind of made it to a couple shows here and there and limped home. And George gave me a trailer to cover the phone bill.
Oh, man.
And yeah, but I was pretty good friends with George for a long time. We used
Yeah.
to hang out a lot.
Yeah.
And,
When he got the revival thing, I think they had Mario playing drums.
right.
maybe, or
And wasn't
something?
Scott in the band for a
Scott
little
was,
while?
yeah. They had like some pretty rad people.
Yeah. A whole new younger generation
Yeah.
who were stoked to play with somebody
Yeah.
that put out such great records.
Yeah.
I mean, they used to put really good shows. We did a New Year's Eve show with them and UK Subs at Adams one year,
Uh-huh.
probably 82 New Year's Eve.
Wow.
And the sound man was drunk. And it was Battalion of Saints. UK Subs were headlining. Battalion of Saints were on stage, and sound man was just wasted, not doing anything he was supposed to be doing. And George runs off stage in the middle of the song, runs down to the soundboard and punches the guy out,
Wow.
and then runs back on
Yeah,
stage.
yeah. I bet it sounded better.
Yeah. It was pretty crazy stuff. I think there were fireworks going off inside the venue that night too.
Wow.
People were just shooting off fireworks.
Wow.
And stuff. Pretty crazy. New Year's Eve.
That's funny because the New Year's thing is pretty wild. I don't know, it wasn't a New Year's show, but there was because we had this house in Golden Hill we'd have shows at over the years, and we did this show because we were getting evicted, so we had like this eviction show, and it was like the Locust, Blood Brothers, and then Moving Units played, and then what was to become Mars Volta played as well, and it was like it was insane. There was like I think there was like 400 or 500 people there, and I know like the Che and Soma and one other show were booked, and those shows just canceled their shows because and it was like we had
Was that the house you had with Alicia?
Yeah, no, this is like before,
way before that.
It was actually right around the corner from there.
Okay.
And it was a pretty crazy show, and like a bunch of people almost went to jail, me being one of them, and ironically it was like I was like sober, and and like I wasn't going to jail for anything, but like everyone was going to go to jail for like all the, I guess, the right reasons that maybe the wrong reasons, I guess, depending on how you look at it. But it is funny to think about the things that get the police there and cause.
I went to back in probably early days, like Skeleton Club days. There was a guy named Doug Rabies. No. Actually, no. It was okay. Doug Rabies was part of this, but George from Battalion Saints, he was in a band called Neutrons first before that. So it was called George Neutron. That was his name. And they had a house, and I can't remember where it was, but they were getting evicted, and they had a party. And I remember going there with a couple of friends. I didn't know a lot of the people there at the time, but people were pounding holes through the walls with sledgehammers, breaking the windows. Like you could walk from the living room through the bedroom without going through the door.
Yeah,
like a big giant hole in the wall. It was insane.
Yeah,
I'd never seen anything like that.
It's pretty crazy to think about, like the stuff that you've booked, and like I mean, you said you booked Nirvana and things like that have become massive. But I remember like Bob Barley from Bond Communications, like going and seeing like Green Day or Rage Against the Machine or something, in like his house, and
he had the shows in his backyard. Yeah. My wife grew up in Chula Vista, so she went to school with Paul.
Oh, okay.
And she remembers going to Bob's house to see shows back when whenever that was. Yeah, crazy.
Go on.
Oh, I was just going to say, now he's a plumber to everybody.
He's always been a plumber.
So many people.
He fixed my washer yesterday and was telling me that he, I was talking about when he was 18 and was doing plumbing, and I stopped and bought a house, and that was where VC was, and that's where bands played and stuff.
I mean, so he had a house back then too. Of his own.
He was talking about how he worked and saved up all this money and bought a house for like, back then, which is a lot of money, but like $70,000,
right.
And like, which you can't even buy
you can't even make a down payment now.
You can't, which is pretty wild because I live in City Heights now, and so I drive down Adams often, every day, and I always trip out on the Adams Avenue.
Whenever like I go to the street fair, I always go in there and take a look around. I'll take my son in there. I'll say, this is where the bands used to be. Here's the little room under the thing where we would stash our beer, because you couldn't have beer in there and stuff. And it was pretty.
So how
crazy.
does that place stay like a fabric store in such a demand, like a high demand?
Well, it's not a theater anymore at all. I mean, the stage is gone. Yeah, the whole thing has been it went through an ownership change in mid '80s.
What kind of theater was it besides?
It was just, I think a long time ago, it might have been a movie theater, but it was a weird setup because it had the stage was built into the room. So the wings were kind of like the walls were part of the structure on the sides. And then there was a lowered space in front of the stage. Then there was a raised area behind that about halfway back, which was 3 feet taller than the pit. The pit area was really big. Yeah. But then there was a whole raised space. And then on either side, there were balconies. Like that went the whole length of the building. So there was a lot of great spots to see bands, just see the stage from there. But I don't recall ever seeing a movie in there. After they kind of booted me out after that Motorhead thing. Some people started putting on metal shows there. And there was a club for a while. It was called Purple Rain, I think it was. And it was kind of a soul R&B kind of place where they had DJs and bands, and after that, it just stopped. I don't know how it went from a theater to a fabric store. Yeah, but it's unusable as a theater anymore.
It couldn't be renovated.
I don't think so. I think you'd have to go in and probably do a lot of work to get the permits to do it right.
Yeah, But well, so at this point in your in your life and your career, do you ever think about making a Casbah like place but bigger?
No, I think about it every now and then, but I'd be competing against myself with a Casbah, number one,
Uh-huh.
because we get a lot of bands there that could be playing bigger places, but they like to play there.
Yeah.
Number two, I can book shows at all the other bigger places already without
Anyhow.
having to own them
Yeah.
and having to worry about running them and
Sure.
dealing with calling Bob Marley to fix
Yeah.
shit,
Yeah.
all that stuff. So,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I can book shows at any size up from Casbah to like we're doing something at the open air theater
Uh-huh.
in October. So yeah.
So is that the biggest? open air?
That's the biggest,
Yeah.
yeah. And I do that reluctantly because it's scary money when you get up to that big. You
Sure.
can lose a shit ton of money.
Well, and then have you done any of the festival stuff?
No,
No.
have not. Have
Huh.
not. We did a couple outdoor things in North Park, like behind the theater a few years ago, but
Uh,
that was like, 1,500 people in a
Yeah.
parking lot. So
yeah.
no, I haven't done a festival ever.
Huh.
That's scary money too.
Yeah. I mean, the things that have happened festival-wise in San Diego in like, I guess the realm that I would be associated with or something like street scene or whatever.
Right,
like, so-
exactly. And
yeah.
I helped book bands the last 2 years of Street Scene.
Does it still
and-
happen?
No, it hasn't
Yeah.
happened since 2010.
Okay.
So the guy approached me in 2009 and he was pretty much almost done booking it, but he wanted me to help him book some, cooler bands. So I helped book him. I didn't get paid. I just did it
Yeah.
to do it, to be part of it.
Sure.
So then the next year I started on the whole thing from the beginning, and he had seemed like a good lineup at the time, but he lost I guess he had lost money the year before in 2009.
Yeah.
So the day of the 2010 one, the Saturday, the first day of it, or no, that was the second day actually. I get a call from a band's tour manager who I had known, and he says, "Hey, they're locking us out of our trailers backstage." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He says, "Yeah, they're booting everybody out of the trailers and they're going to lock them all up because the guy owes them money
Whoa.
from the year before."
Whoa.
So I'm like, "Okay, well, better get down there a little earlier than I had
Yeah,
planned."
yeah.
So I get down there, and there's like the guy Rob Hagee had owed people from the year before for production, staging, the trailers, hospitality, all that stuff, the backstage stuff, and so they all just said, "We're not going to do anything until you pay us." And so somehow he got them to open the trailers, but then there was a bunch of bands and agents sitting there waiting for money before they would go on stage. So like Public Enemy was supposed to play,
Uh-huh.
and their agent sitting there right outside Hagee's got a trailer where he's paying, writing checks and stuff.
Oh, this was when it was downtown.
Yeah, it was
Okay, I saw
downtown.
that Public
Yeah.
Enemy.
So
performance, yeah.
they were on. I don't know if you remember. They went on about 45 minutes late.
Yeah.
Because they wouldn't go on until they got paid in cash. They weren't going to take a check, and they were getting 20 grand, I think it was.
Wow.
So their booking agent's sitting outside the trailer. I'm like, "Hey, John, what are you doing?" He goes, "I'm just waiting for some cash so my band can go on."
Wow.
And finally, they got him the cash. And they went on stage, and so then he had to call in his brother, who had a bank account with some funds in it. Who a lot of bands started finding out we need to get paid before we
Yeah.
go on. There's no way you can get that much cash on a day
yeah.
like that. So his brother started writing checks. The Dead Weather were playing on one of the main stages, like the headlining slot. And I went over, and Dave Kaplan, their booking agent, I've known for a long time. And I'm over in a trailer with the guys from X taking a break, like, okay, with all this stuff's calmed down a little. And I get a call from him right then and there before the Dead Weather goes, I hear that bands aren't getting paid. They aren't going to go on unless they get paid. So
man.
so I got to run back over there, and I'm like, "Okay, you guys got to write a check to the Dead Weather right now
Yeah.
because they won't go on." And you got 30,000 people out there going to have a freak out if they don't go on. So, and there's all these giant, big booking agents sitting in his trailer, like, I don't know, Marsha Vlasic, like she's been around for like 40 years.
Yeah.
This big, powerful woman. A couple others I didn't even know, and they're all sitting in there waiting for their money too.
Wow.
And his brother's writing checks, man.
It's crazy
they
that
pay
the
them.
agents are even there.
Oh yeah, well,
yeah.
I guess there was some worry. I don't know, or maybe they were just there to look after their clients. But it was weird that they were all there. But they were all there, and a lot of bands did not get paid afterwards. And so I had booked a lot of them, and they booking agent will call me like, "Hey, when's our band getting paid?" And I'm like, "Well, here's Rob Hagee's phone number. He signed the contracts." And I kept getting calls for like 3 or 4 months on that. And most of the people I had booked with know me and I'd worked with for years, so they didn't hold me responsible.
Sure.
But it was gnarly. So that's the guy ended up losing his house. He had to sell his house. He had a house in La Jolla. He had to sell it to pay
Whoa.
off all the bills. Yeah, so he was devastated financially.
I can.
So, anyways, that's just scary kind of money you're dealing with
I
on
cannot
festivals.
imagine.
Yeah, me either.
Wow.
Me either. But then the funny thing is, I haven't run into him a long time, but I keep hearing through the grapevine that he wants to get back in it, do another festival. And I'm like, dude, you're going to have to pay everybody from the last one and pay everybody up front for this one.
It's only been like 7 years.
7 years. Yeah, everybody still remembers that.
Unless he came in.
I mean,
with some
Connor
money.
Oberst still brings it up when I see him. Like, hey, are we ever going to get that money? It was like $50,000 they got stiffed.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'm like, yeah, that's never going to happen. But
that's so crazy.
Yeah.
Huh. That is one of the reputations that I know you've never had. Everyone.
No,
always
you
says
can't.
that.
I mean, and people do that and get away with it too.
Yeah.
But even if we lose money, you still got to pay what you told
I mean,
you pay. I mean, sometimes they'll ask, hey, can you guys take a little less? If they say no, we can't. We're like, okay, here you get what you get. But sometimes people will say, yeah, give us less. So.
Wow, that's crazy.
But we don't do that very often.
I've been at a couple shows where they just didn't pay us, and it's like, then our agent's on the phone, and it's like, well, we gotta go. We have to leave and go like to the next city.
And then you leave it to. And that's the thing. I mean, there's every now and then there'll be a discrepancy, like a contract's got the wrong number, or we have the wrong number, But everybody we book is like, okay, well, we'll figure it out tomorrow. I'll call your agent. We'll get it taken care of. They know we're good for it.
Yeah.
And we never had an issue like that.
Yeah.
So.
And then, so what do you think about, like, this is such a stupid question, but like I'm always it's always kind of brought up, and I think it's really important, but like it's weird, okay, because the way I thought about it was like the segue was based on like the festival thing, because it seems like people don't care as much about live music, and the festival thing is a big deal now. People care about Coachella and shit, but like people like just typically don't care to go out to live shows.
I don't know. I mean, it's hard. I mean, the festival thing now, all the big ones, it's all like DJs and EDM stuff. I mean, Coachella's gone from where it used to be bands to the EDM stuff that was in the tents is now a lot of the headlining stuff. So, but I mean, something like Coachella, it's an event. People they don't care who's playing usually.
I know, huh? But there's big money in a festival, right?
Oh,
you could pay...
those guys make shit tons of money. I mean, they do 100,000 people each day.
But when you're spending, you're like
they're spending millions. I have no idea what they spend.
Yeah.
I mean, I've only been to Coachella once. I went to see Paul McCartney, 2010, and I think he got $1 million. I had heard. I'm not sure, but you multiply that times a few headliners, and then you got 75 other bands.
Yeah,
it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, as far as people not caring to go to live shows, I mean, I see. Sometimes you see a lot of apathy, but then other times you're surprised. So as a rule, it's hard to say. I mean, there's so many things for people to do in San Diego. And, there's a lot more clubs now. There's a lot of shows going on any given night. So, sometimes things will do way less than we thought they would. And sometimes they'll surprise us and do way better.
Huh.
And, we kind of look at advanced ticket sales now, to kind of gauge how a show's going to do. And most of the time, the advanced sales will be the bulk of it, and you'll do a little bit of walk up, like especially on early nights of the week. But then every once in a while, you'll do a show where you sell 70 advance, and you'll do 85 at the door on a Tuesday night. So it's almost impossible to figure.
There's no real.
Yeah, there's no pattern.
Huh.
I wish there was.
Yeah, we'd all be.
It'd make my job a lot easier.
It'd be better for me as a
for everybody.
Music too.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a trip because I'm always like, whoa, there's this many people here, or like, oh, there's nobody here.
Right,
or,
exactly, same thing.
Yeah. Even because like Luke and I would put on, like, we've been doing this Planet B night in San Diego, and we did it at a couple bars, and we were moving it again to another place, but it's like it's trying to figure out like, why did nobody show up to this?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, there's so many other, beyond whatever you have on your lineup, there's other influences, like who's playing over there, what's going on down the street, or wherever.
And again, a lot of it does have to do with the venue and stuff, like how people like love the Casbah. There's not to sound weird or whatever, but there's like an energy that happens there that you cannot replicate in another
Yeah, I
place.
mean, I've had a lot of people tell me that in different bands over the years who played there for years and
Yeah.
years and who played everywhere around the world for years. And I mean, it feels like a house, my home to me. I mean,
Sure.
I walk in there, it's like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm comfortable, and
Yeah.
you know, I know every minute square inch of what's going on there. But yeah, I don't know. It's weird. I mean, I like seeing shows there better than just about anywhere else I can think of because you
Uh-huh.
can be right there, you know. I don't go to a lot of shows at a lot of different places very often. I mean,
You don't have to.
yeah, I mean, yeah, that's true. So, but yeah, it's weird.
I mean, it's like booking Melvin's there, you know, like
Yeah,
the-
like
the-
they still keep playing there. I
know.
mean, they're coming back in July,
yeah.
and you know, every once in a while they'll ask about playing the Belly Up.
Oh, they will.
Yeah, their agent will like, well, listen. I'm like, yeah, okay, well, yeah, you know.
So they could do Belly Up or 2 nights at Casbah.
Yeah, and
it's-
this most recent time, I said, okay, let's just do 2 nights
Yeah.
this time, and they came back, and I sent them a 2-night offer, and they came back like, we only got time for one, so we're gonna do Casbah one night. I'm like,
Whoa.
okay, I'll take it.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean,
Never
that's
gonna
like
turn
no-brainer.
it. Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
one of these days we'll do 2 nights or try a Belly Up or something. I don't
Yeah.
know.
And then what about like when you did? I was on tour and I was so mad, but you did the Jehu show. How was that?
Oh, we did 2 of them. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
the 2 nights.
They were 2 weeks apart. Those were just crazy, insane.
I mean,
you know.
the free thing at the
that park. Did you go to that?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It was like
that was
magical.
That was
it was like
ridiculous.
4,000 people, 5,000.
4 or 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I got up there. I took an Uber up there because we had something at the Casbah that afternoon. We had something going on, so I just popped up the hill and got there and I was like, oh my god!
I didn't
it was
expect that.
insane.
Yeah.
I didn't either.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
And like all generations.
yeah,
And like
yeah,
dogs.
it was
and-
magic. It was
you know.
magical.
Yeah, it was. It was
was
something
really,
that
really
was so
cool.
special. But then, like, to have them play the Casbah makes
Yeah.
sense in John's involvement and everybody's involvement. But also, like, they could have just played bigger.
Oh yeah, they could have done maybe the observatory or definitely the Belly Up or
Yeah.
wherever, and yeah, it's like Mike Kennedy. It's funny at the Balboa Park show. I went back to talk to those guys, and Mike Kennedy and I are pretty good friends over the years. I don't see him very often anymore, and I went up to him and said, "Dude, how are you, man? It's good to see you." And he goes, "Oh man, I'm sorry we didn't play the Casbah." I'm like, "No, what are you talking about? This is
Yeah.
amazing, and we're doing 2 Casbah shows in a couple months."
So you already
it's all
knew,
good.
huh? Because they were like, "This is it." And everyone's
Yeah.
like,
Well, we had been talking about
Yeah.
it, and their agents like, yeah. Well, they the thing that happened to get them playing again is they got a new manager, a guy named Juan Carrera, who managed Modest Mouse. That's how I actually met him. He was like a tour manager from bands in Chicago. I met him in Chicago years and years ago. But then he started being a tour manager. Then he started managing bands. So somehow him and John Reese hooked up,
Uh-huh.
and he just managed Rocket and Jehu.
Oh, okay.
And he had told me,
On like the recent.
yeah, the
year.
most recent,
Yeah,
like
uh-huh.
probably 4 or 5 years ago,
Yeah.
whenever they started playing again.
Uh-huh.
And he was in town, and he was at the Casbah one night, and John was there, and I was talking to him. I was like, what are you doing here? He goes, oh, I'm going to start working with these guys. I'm like, oh, really? Does that mean Jehu's going to play? He goes, we're working on something. This was like
Before, yeah.
6 or 8 months
Uh-huh.
before. So he said they were going to do something, but I had no idea what,
Yeah.
And then that park thing came up. It was
Yeah.
pretty amazing.
It was crazy to go to that. It was like, I'm not religious, but it was like a religious experience.
Yeah, I agree.
Maybe the timing and the sun setting.
Yeah, the
all
time
this
of day
stuff.
was
Yeah,
perfect,
it's
and
so
just
crazy.
the amount of people.
And the
there
woman
that
that
were,
played the
with
organ.
the organ was cool. Yeah,
I mean, I
was
couldn't
gonna
hear
say.
her at all. Which
No,
was pretty
but just the idea of her up there playing
Yeah.
that thing,
It was sick to like see John like and her communicating with
Yeah.
telepathy, musical telepathy,
Yeah.
like just looking at each other and being like, here it goes, and I was like, damn, that lady is like playing like the most, because I mean, they're not like a punk rock band, but it is punk. It is so
Oh,
fucked up, like
Yeah,
to watch him
completely.
like, playing up, these discordant chords, and I don't know what she could play on that organ that would match that,
Something, man.
It was cool.
Yeah.
I mean, just from like there was so many things, like a cultural standpoint, a musical standpoint, and an aesthetical standpoint. There was so much aesthetics happening with like the
I
sunset.
remember seeing Dang up on the little catwalk they had
Yeah.
at the very top.
Yep.
At one point when the sun was going on, Dang was up there taking a picture.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, look at that.
He's the
guy."
one that
We
like,
put it together. Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I hope for more stuff like that. I mean, I think like in my life in San Diego, there's only been a handful of things that were just like that big
It's
of a
funny,
deal.
you know. So after that happened, Dang and I were meeting with the guy who was in charge of the San Diego Bicentennial, I think, or Centennial, but either I think 100-year anniversary thing. Yeah, it was 2015, right?
Uh-huh.
So they had big plans to do other stuff in the park during that year, the rest of the year in 2015. And so Dang and I were meeting with this guy named Mike Ruiz, he's a music fan, but he's in charge of events at the park or in some capacity. And we sat down with him a couple times. He said, yeah, we maybe want to do another one of those kind of things. We want to do some other events around the park that would simulate the feeling and the aesthetic and the
Yeah.
music that you know that event pulled off, and it never came to fruition. They kind of
Huh.
just the whole centennial thing in the park just, I don't know if you remember, they had hired a committee from LA
Uh-huh.
to put the centennial together in San Diego,
Whoa.
and they spent a shit ton of money, like $300,000-400,000 on studies and committee meetings, and then the whole thing just disbanded, and they never did. I don't think they did anything to celebrate the 100 years of San Diego in the
Yeah.
park like they were supposed to.
Was that part of that?
No, that
No.
wasn't part of it. That was
Oh.
before. So this came about after that they were talking about
Sure.
it. Yeah.
But I was when I was there, I was thinking two things. I was wondering like people that were just like not there knowing that it was going to
Yeah,
happen,
just in the
or
park.
yeah, we're probably like, why are all these people here?
Yeah.
And then like, why the hell is this noise happening? Because you know, musically, it's beautiful to you or I, but to regular people, they're probably like, this is
a
garbage.
bunch of noise. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Um,
It's like, why would they let this happen in the park?
Yeah. So it would have been so amazing to, you know, it'd be rad like if like I don't know, like Noisy or someone was there like interviewing people like that weren't there
Right,
to see
right.
that, you know, to like
Yeah.
get their
I'm
take on it,
surprised
you know.
nobody did.
But I don't think anybody knew what was the magnitude of that,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
So you wouldn't be able to project.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Like, okay, we're gonna have a whole bunch of cultural clash here.
Yeah, because that, you know, there, and especially like with the Oregon Pavilion, and you know, I mean, I've gone to those events. They have their just the regular ones.
Yeah,
are
they're cool.
wonderful.
Yeah, yeah,
And they're
yeah.
like with the donors of this and that. And, you know, this is like the bourgeois, and so you know, and there's people, even the people that go to them typically, like they're out there with their nice wine, and I'm all like,
Right, the little
you know,
picnic
yeah,
basket and the whole
yeah.
deal, you
And
know.
I'll grab like, you know, vegan fast food from Evolution and my dog, and we're sitting out there being like, I'm not part. I can't donate, you know. But I wonder like what those people that are like, I donated for this, like, you
Right.
know, like I wonder if
Yeah,
there was
for
like,
the organ, like there was some brouhaha about how much money the organ Carol, the organ player, was
Yeah.
getting paid. Like, and I can't remember what the details were, but there was a stink raised about she's getting paid this much, only do this many shows a month, and people were complaining about it. You know, it's like, and they broke it down like, well, no, she has to help maintain that thing. She practices.
Yeah.
She puts on all these events.
Yeah.
It's not just showing up for an hour and playing the event. There's a lot more work behind the scenes. So
Sure.
that all died down, but yeah,
A lot of people don't understand that what
No,
goes
oh,
into
they don't,
any
they
kind
don't,
of show.
they don't.
Yeah.
You know, back when I was doing shows in the 80s, and we kind of started out doing $5, $6, $7 shows, and after a certain while, bringing over English bands and stuff, we started charging $10.
Yeah.
And so I had this nickname, $10 Tim, and there was this kind of group of, they were kind of anarchist type punk rocker guys who put out this little zine. I forget the name of it, but they $10 Tim, and they were like, they'd rag on it all the time. And you know, anytime, so if once in a while I do an interview for some other zine, and they'd ask me about it, and I'm like, well, you know what, shit, go put your own show on, man. Charge $3. More power to you if you can make it happen. You know, because nobody does realize all the things you got to pay. You know, well, you do, but you know, a lot of people that complain about it have no idea.
I mean, a lot of it was like the like sort of Fugazi, like no more than $5.
Yeah,
thing,
yeah,
you know?
yeah.
I mean, I even tripped out. I remember Fugazi playing Soma, and that was crazy in itself. But I remember like thinking,
Was that
like,
the downtown one or the second location?
second location,
right, in Bay Park.
Yeah, and I, you know, and it was like, wow, so there's still the $5, you know, and like,
And it's hard to pull off.
yeah,
I mean, you
promoters,
promoters, they aren't making. I mean, you're doing
Yeah.
it just to do it. I mean, we did a show with the Evens, you know, him and his wife's band at. A couple of years ago, we did a gallery downtown. He wanted to play in a gallery, so I found this guy I knew had this place called Cassius King Gallery, small place. We booked it in there, and it was like $5, I think. And you know, the band made maybe $450. We had to pay the sound guy $100.
Yeah.
and pay a door person, and that was it.
Yeah,
But I didn't care.
Yeah.
We just wanted to do
because
it.
you did it.
So then, probably 2 years ago, I think he was doing FYF. So he wanted to do a show down here. So I'm saying, well, we need to do it somewhere a little bigger. Let's do it at the Irenic. And I remember having numerous conversations with Ian on the phone about the ticket price, and I'm like, $8, because the Irenic has certain fixed expenses.
Sure.
The rent is this, the staff is that. We aren't going to have to advertise or do anything else, but these things, we got to at least cover those.
Yeah.
And you guys need to make some money too. So I remember $8 is going to be reasonable. Nobody will bat an eye at $8.
Yeah.
He's like, you sure? I mean, and he was really.
This is like
going,
in recent times.
This was 2 years ago.
Yeah, $8.
Yeah. And so I'm like, I'm reading off all the other shows we have there and what
Yeah.
the ticket prices are.
Yeah.
This one's 12, this is 15, this is 17, and I think we had 3 phone conversations about it before we finally, okay, let's go with
Yeah.
$8. And
Yeah.
it was nobody batted an eye.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was cool.
I think times have changed.
Definitely,
yeah.
definitely. I mean, everything costs way more than even 3 years ago. So, but yeah, he's a cool guy. And he sent me a postcard afterwards. Thanks for putting on the show.
Wow.
He's a pretty nice guy.
That's great.
Yeah.
He's
He's an awesome dude.
But that's the thing is, there's only a handful of people like him
Right.
that can say, no, I'm doing this. Because
Right.
anybody else would be like, well, you're not going
Yeah,
on
we're
tour.
not going to do it. Yeah,
you're not going on tour.
You can't afford to go on tour.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But I mean, it also is too, like, Evans is just him and his wife, right?
Yeah, so it's the two of
yeah.
them. They travel. They had a kid, and they
Yeah.
brought their kid with them,
Wow.
and they're traveling in a little car.
Yeah.
They've got tiny amps and
Yeah.
everything fits in the car. So
Yeah. Not to keep talking about Ian, but I love that there's that quote where like they were offered like $1 million to play Coachella or something, Fugazi, and he said the next time Fugazi plays, it'll be for free in DC, and I was like, that's so righteous.
Yeah, that's
but
awesome.
it's like, yeah, but they can say that. Like, there's not most people. Everyone I play with is like, we can't. I can't turn down
$1 million,
$5,000.
right? Exactly, right, exactly.
Like,
$1 million, you can play a lot of free shows for ever thereafter.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, I always think, like, if I ever hit that $1 million point, which I probably won't, I'll just do free shows from
Yeah,
like,
for
whatever.
at least a couple years after that.
yeah, it'd be wild to think about that. But it must be nice to have that luxury.
Yeah, exactly. It's big to be able to stick to your ideals. I mean, it's so hard to.
Yeah. Huh. Well, that's again going back to your specific ideals and the thing that you've created, opposed to like other promoters. Not to rag on people, but sure to rag on people like Len from Soma. It's like night and day. Like everyone that talks about playing those two different.
Yeah, and it's the philosophy we've had. I said this earlier. It's like treat people like you'd want to be treated.
Sure.
That's it. It's
Yeah.
just simple,
Yeah,
It's so easy, and I have, that's what my staff is instructed
Sure.
to do. Sometimes they lose track and gotta,
Yeah.
have words with them and stuff, but mostly they're all on the same page.
I got thrown out of the Casbah once, and then
When?
you had called me actually. It was great. It was it was the Melvin. I mean, sorry, it was Melt Banana and Das Oath, and there was like a pit, and this guy like threw me, and I pushed him, and it was totally fine. The security was like, "You're out of here." A bottle broke, and I was like, "It's cool. Fuck it. I'm gonna leave." And I remember like just being like, "It's fine," because I had been on tour with those bands. I guess, or I don't know, whatever reason, I was like, it's cool. And I started driving home, and you had called me, and you're like, you can come back. They made a mistake. And I was like, it's fine.
Really?
I'm gonna go home, man. It's fine. Because it was like a big deal. I was like, I got thrown
Well, I
out of
remember
the
one
Casbah.
time when years ago, Rocket was playing, and Greg Jacobs, their manager, had his offices in the building next door, the Casbah.
Oh yeah,
It was back in the heyday when
Yeah.
they were on the big label and there
Sure.
was money.
Yep.
And Gary Hustwood had his little office over there. Remember that?
Yeah.
The publishing thing he
Yep.
did. So Greg Jacobs' office was there, and Rocket was playing, and I think they were doing 2 nights. And there was a pit. Do you know Mark Garris?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Mark Garris got thrown out. Him and Pete Reichard were super tight buddies and good. And so the band got all worked up after the show, like, you can't throw our friend out like that, Mark. Mark Garris, he's part of our
yeah,
team. And Andrew was our guy back then, tall Andrew, bald guy. Remember he
Yeah,
worked for us.
yeah.
So the band all went next door to Greg's office to have a meeting about it and talk about
Oh,
it,
yeah.
and they came back and like, we had to tell them. Andrew told them what happened, and they're like, okay, well, yeah, everything's cool. I mean, we're gonna play the next show tomorrow, but we got to be careful with the bouncers and stuff. It's like, you know what, the guy, Mark Garris was a jackass
Sure.
at the time. You know, he probably definitely deserved to get thrown out, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
But, you know, just the weird things like that where,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, I guess we do try to be conscious of those situations where maybe somebody didn't do what we thought they did.
Sure.
That's
Yeah.
probably why I called you.
I don't know. I've been thrown
Yeah.
out for the right reasons and the wrong
Yeah,
reasons.
yeah,
you know?
exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
it's hard because we've thrown out people, you know, you throw out somebody, they've always got their story, and then there's story of the guy who threw him out, what he saw. And
Yeah.
it's a tough thing. I mean,
Sure.
we've had people do shit like push people really hard and start fights, and you go up and try to talk to them, they turn around, they slugged one
Yeah.
of my guys,
Yeah.
and he slugged the guy back. It turned out, and then the guy fell and hit his head,
Yeah.
and had to call an ambulance, and they called the cops, and they arrested my door guy.
Whoa.
My bouncer guy got
Yeah.
arrested, but then it turns out that the guy who he hit had like a 2.0 blood alcohol level, which is like twice as much as
Yeah.
you could stand.
Yeah.
And so the charges got dropped
Whoa.
on my guy,
Uh-huh.
but then the guy's suing. He's still suing us. It's been going on for a
Oh,
year
wow.
and a half.
Whoa.
So, yeah, it's crazy.
But the guy punched him first.
yeah, he came
Yeah.
up and punched him, and so
Yeah.
my guy was like feared for his life,
Sure,
and just
sure.
knocked him
Yeah,
back, and
yeah.
you know,
Wow.
well, what are you gonna do?
Well, no one. I mean, a lot of people don't want to be responsible for them.
Oh yeah, for sure,
Yeah.
for sure.
Well, cool, man. I guess that probably would be good for
Yeah.
this.
All right.
For this round. Yeah.
Okay.
That was Cult and Culture with Justin Pearson.
And Luke Henshaw.
Cult and Culture is a Ruinous Media podcast, proudly sponsored by Earthquaker Devices, Heartwork Coffee, Fender, and Diodario.
Planet B.